Steve Irwin. Steve Irwin, widely known across the globe as the crocodile hunter, built his life around interacting with some of the most dangerous creatures on Earth. His boundless enthusiasm, signature khaki uniform, and hands-on approach to wildlife education made him an international icon. He spent his life wrestling massive saltwater crocodiles, relocating venomous snakes, and advocating for the protection of misunderstood predators. Yet, despite his frequent encounters with animals capable of killing a human in seconds, his life was claimed by an animal usually considered gentle and evasive. On September 4, 2006, Irwin was at Bat Reef, a remote section of the Great Barrier Reef off the coast of Queensland, Australia. He was participating in the production of an underwater documentary titled Ocean's Deadliest. During a pause in filming due to bad weather, Irwin decided to snorkel in shallow water to capture casual footage for his daughter's television program. While swimming in the clear water, he approached a short-tailed stingray. These specific rays are enormous, capable of growing over 4 feet wide and weighing hundreds of pounds. They possess a highly evolved defense mechanism designed to ward off predators like tiger sharks. At the base of their long tail sits a serrated, venomous barb, which can grow up to 8 inches long. Stingrays typically flee from humans, gliding away into the sand, but feeling cornered or startled by the swimmer hovering above, this particular ray reacted with sudden, explosive defensive force. It struck Irwin with its tail, driving the sharp, rigid barb directly into his chest. The strike was extraordinarily precise and violent, penetrating his thoracic wall and puncturing his heart and lungs. The serrated edges of the barb caused catastrophic tissue damage. Crew members immediately pulled him aboard their inflatable boat, frantically administering CPR for over an hour as they rushed toward medical help, but the massive trauma was too severe. He died before reaching the hospital. Irwin's death remains one of the only fatal stingray attacks ever captured on video, a tragic and highly improbable end for a man who spent his life navigating the razor's edge of the natural wild. Taylor Mitchell. Taylor Mitchell was a 19-year-old rising star in the Canadian folk music scene. Following the successful release of her debut acoustic album, which garnered a nomination for a Canadian Folk Music Award, she embarked on a solo tour across eastern Canada in the autumn of 2009. With a few days off between performances, she decided to spend the afternoon of October 27th exploring the rugged wilderness of Cape Breton Highlands National Park in Nova Scotia. She set out alone on the Skyline Trail, a popular, heavily visited, and breathtakingly scenic route overlooking the steep cliffs of the Atlantic Ocean. The park was home to a population of eastern coyotes, a conid species that typically hunts rodents, rabbits, and other small mammals, and almost universally avoids human contact. However, researchers later discovered that the coyotes in this specific elevated environment had undergone a highly unusual and dangerous behavioral shift. Driven by a harsh environment and a lack of typical prey, they had adapted to hunting massive adult moose, a high-risk strategy that forced them to become more aggressive, fearless, and cooperative pack hunters. As Mitchell walked the trail, 2 coyotes approached her. Other hikers further down the path had seen the same animals acting unusually bold, refusing to yield the trail and staring humans down. Moments later, those hikers heard desperate screams echoing through the trees. They rushed toward the sound and found the coyotes standing over Mitchell, having viciously attacked her. The hikers managed to scare the animals away and immediately dialed for emergency services. Mitchell was airlifted to a hospital in Halifax with severe bite wounds and immense blood loss covering her entire body. Despite the medical team's best efforts, she died the following morning. Her death shocked wildlife experts and ecologists. It remains the only known fatal coyote attack on an adult in North American history, revealing a terrifying instance where environmental pressures forced a predator to view a human not as an intimidating threat, but as novel prey. Dawn Brancheau. Dawn Brancheau was one of the most experienced, passionate, and respected animal trainers at SeaWorld Orlando. For 15 years, she worked closely with captive marine mammals, developing what appeared to be deep bonds with the animals she performed alongside. On February 24, 2010, Brancheau was participating in a routine afternoon performance called Dine with Shamu. This show was held in an open-air pool where guests ate lunch at a restaurant mere feet away, watching the trainers interact with the killer whales. The whale she was working with was Tilikum, the largest orca in captivity, weighing over 12,000 pounds and measuring 22 feet in length. Captured off the coast of Iceland in the early 1980s, Tilikum had a dark and turbulent history. He had previously been involved in the deaths of 2 other people, a trainer in Canada and a trespasser in Florida, yet he remained a central figure in SeaWorld's breeding and performance programs due to his massive size. As the show concluded, Brancheau lay down on a shallow concrete ledge at the edge of the pool to pet, feed, and reward him. In a sudden, unprovoked, and terrifying shift in behavior, Tilikum grabbed her. Eyewitness accounts suggest he pulled her in by her arm or her ponytail, dragging her seamlessly into the deep water. Once submerged, the immense physical disparity between human and apex predator became inescapable. Tilikum held her underwater, swimming rapidly around the tank and thrashing violently. Park staff rushed to the water's edge, deploying safety nets and throwing buckets of fish into the water in a desperate attempt to distract him, but the massive whale refused to release her. He held her captive beneath the surface for roughly 45 minutes. When they finally managed to recover her body, an autopsy revealed she had died from drowning and severe blunt force trauma, suffering broken ribs, a fractured jawbone, and a severed spinal cord. Her death ignited a massive global controversy, later immortalized in the documentary film Blackfish, which fundamentally shifted public perception regarding the ethics of keeping highly intelligent, socially complex predators confined in concrete environments. Timothy Treadwell. Timothy Treadwell spent 13 consecutive summers traveling to the remote, unforgiving wilderness of Katmai National Park in Alaska to live among wild grizzly bears. He founded an organization called Grizzly People and firmly believed he had developed a deep, spiritual kinship with the apex predators. He often camped mere feet away from them, gave them names, and filmed his close-range interactions, viewing himself as their protector. But nature does not always adhere to human idealism or affection. In October 2003, Treadwell and his partner, Amy Huguenard, traveled to Kaflia Bay for his final expedition of the year. It was unusually late in the season. Winter was rapidly approaching, and the bears were in a state of hyperphagia, a period of frantic, aggressive, and desperate feeding to build fat reserves before hibernation. Furthermore, Treadwell chose to set up their tent directly in the middle of a dense brush area known as a bear maze. This was a major intersection of grizzly travel routes, forcing bears to walk directly past the tent. Biologists later noted this was an exceptionally dangerous and reckless location. On October 6th, an air taxi pilot arrived to pick the couple up, but instead found a collapsed tent and a large, heavily scarred male grizzly sitting on top of a human torso. Park rangers were flown in immediately, and after a brief, tense standoff in the brush, they shot and killed the bear, known to researchers only as Bear 141. Investigators discovered a video camera at the campsite with the lens cap still on, but the microphone had captured the harrowing 6-minute audio of the attack. It recorded Treadwell's desperate screams as the bear dragged him into the woods, and Amy's frantic, doomed attempts to fight the massive animal off with a frying pan before she, too, was killed. A necropsy of the bear confirmed the grim reality, revealing human clothing and remains inside its digestive tract. Treadwell's story, later told in Werner Herzog's documentary Grizzly Man, was the first fatal bear attack in the history of the park, serving as a brutal reminder of the absolute, unforgiving laws of the wild. Jacques Boxberger. Jacques Boxberger, affectionately known to his fans as Jackie, was a celebrated French track and field athlete who defined an era of distance running. He was a multi-time Olympian, representing France in both the 1968 and 1984 games. He was a European indoor champion in the 1,500 meters, a 2-time winner of the Paris Marathon, and a man who spent his life pushing the limits of human physical endurance. He was defined by his speed, discipline, and remarkable stamina. In August 2001, at the age of 52, Boxberger was vacationing with his wife and daughter on a safari in Kenya. They were visiting Tsavo East National Park, a vast, sun-baked expanse of wilderness famous for its large, roaming herds of red dust-coated elephants. Elephants are widely admired for their high intelligence, deep memories, and complex social structures. But they are also fiercely territorial, highly protective of their young, and possess unimaginable physical power. While at a designated picnic site within the park, Boxberger stepped out and attempted to film a wild elephant. Approaching a wild elephant on foot is an incredibly dangerous gamble, as their temperament can shift in a fraction of a second if they feel threatened, encroached upon, or startled. Without warning, the massive animal turned aggressively toward him. Before the former Olympian could react, retreat, or use his famous speed to escape, the elephant charged. It grabbed Boxberger with its muscular trunk, an appendage packed with over 40,000 muscles and capable of lifting heavy trees with ease. The elephant violently hurled him through the air, slamming his body against the trunk of a tree. The animal then moved forward and mercilessly trampled him. The sheer weight and crushing force of an animal that can weigh well over 10,000 pounds caused fatal injuries almost instantly. The entire horrific event unfolded in front of his helpless family. His sudden death stands as a stark illustration of how quickly peaceful wildlife observation can turn into a deadly encounter when dealing with the colossal, explosive strength of Earth's largest land mammals. King Alexander. King Alexander I of Greece ruled during one of the most volatile and consequential geopolitical eras of the 20th century. Placed on the throne in 1917 after his pro-German father, King Constantine, was forced into exile by the Allies. The young king oversaw a period of massive territorial expansion for Greece following the First World War. Working alongside Prime Minister Eleftherios Venizelos, Alexander became a symbol of a rising, victorious nation. But his reign and the ultimate fate of his entire country would be completely unraveled by a bizarre, seemingly minor encounter in a garden. In October 1920, the 27-year-old king was walking his pet German shepherd, Fritz, through the lush, vine-covered grounds of the Totoi Palace near Athens. The estate manager kept domestic Barbary macaques on the property. Suddenly, one of the monkeys dropped from the vines and fiercely attacked the king's dog. Alexander immediately rushed into the fray to separate the fighting animals. As he waded in, a second macaque leaped onto the king, biting him deeply and aggressively on his leg and torso. Palace servants heard the commotion, ran over, and eventually chased the monkeys away. The king's wounds were promptly cleaned and dressed, but his doctors decided not to cauterize them, drastically underestimating the severity and bacterial danger of a monkey bite. Within days, a severe infection took hold. As Alexander's condition deteriorated into full-blown sepsis, his medical team debated amputating his leg, but no surgeon wanted the heavy, career-ending responsibility of maiming a monarch. The infection spread uncontrollably, and after 23 days of agonizing fever, the king died. The absurdity of the incident masked its devastating geopolitical magnitude. Alexander's sudden death threw Greece into political chaos. Venizelos was voted out. The exiled king Constantine was voted back into power. Experienced military commanders were heavily purged, and the destabilized Greek army was subsequently routed in the Greco-Turkish War. This led to the burning of Smyrna and immense civilian casualties. Reflecting on the profound chain reaction triggered by this single, unpredictable animal attack, Winston Churchill later wrote, "It is perhaps no exaggeration to remark that 250,000 persons died of this monkey's bite." If you enjoyed this breakdown, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more, and let me know in the comments if you'd like to see part 2.